In the beginning, I thought the fatigue was just from stress, lack of sleep, or maybe the strange backaches that come with turning 40. I worked as a technical manager at an electronics company in Phoenix, Arizona, a job that demanded sharp thinking and left no room for illness. I ate clean, slept well, ran 3 times a week, and never missed my annual checkups. No one, not even my family doctor, thought the small lumps on my neck were signs of something serious. But after several blood tests and a lymph node biopsy, the oncologist looked at me with an expression I had seen only once before, on the day I watched my father struggle to breathe in his hospital bed. He spoke slowly, like every word carried its own weight. "Cameron, you have stage 3 Hodgkin lymphoma." I didn't say anything for a few minutes. My hands gripped the sides of the chair, and sweat gathered on my forehead even with the air conditioner humming. The first thing that came to mind wasn't death, but the faces of my wife and daughter. Elise, my wife of 16 years, and Olivia, our daughter, had just turned 16 last month. Driving home that evening, my heart pounded like someone was knocking from inside my chest. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of losing the trust in their eyes. I was afraid Olivia would see me as a father fading away. I feared Elise would wear that practice smile that said, "Everything will be fine," and then quietly cry in the bathroom, just like she used to tell me her mom did whenever her parents fought. Dinner that night was grilled meat Elise had tried from a new recipe online, but I couldn't taste anything. When Olivia asked why I looked tired, I gave her a half smile and got up to wash my hands. Then I sat down on the couch and asked them to join me. I had something to say. "Elise, Olivia, I just got back from the hospital. The news isn't great." I don't remember how I said it. I just remember Olivia covering her mouth, her eyes wide. Elise tried to stay calm, but her hand clutched mine tightly. I told them everything: the diagnosis, the chemotherapy plan, the low survival odds, but the slim line of hope. I spoke like a man trying to steer through a hurricane using a shredded map. "I'm going to fight," I whispered. "I'm not ready to give up anything. Not you, not her, not this life." Elise leaned in and hugged me, whispering in my ear, "We're going to get through this together." Olivia nodded, tears streaking her face, but her eyes held firm resolve. I knew I was luckier than most. My company provided solid insurance. We had nearly $200,000 in joint savings and a college fund set aside for Olivia since elementary school. The house was fully paid off 3 years ago. Money wasn't the problem. What terrified me most was the helplessness I saw in their eyes. The fear I tried so hard to hide was mirrored in them. The next day, I called the doctor to confirm my first chemo appointment. Then I sat alone in the car under the searing August sun, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting for a miracle to fall through the windshield. But I smiled faintly. If there's anything certain in life, it's this: you make your own miracles. I picked up my phone and texted Elise, "Don't worry, I'm not letting this thing take me down." I didn't know what the road ahead looked like, but I did know one thing: I was going to enter this fight like someone with nothing left to lose, except hope. I'll never forget that third morning after my second chemo session. My whole body drained, legs limp like overcooked noodles. My head spun, every breath felt like fire scraping my lungs. The scent of plastic tubing clung to my arm. I stumbled toward the kitchen only to find Olivia eating cereal with eyes glued to her phone, earbuds in. Elise was tapping away at her laptop, not looking up. "Can you make me some lemonade?" I asked, my voice scratchy like it had been pressed through gravel. Elise glanced briefly, lips tight, eyes still locked on the screen. "Have Olivia do it. You should sit." Olivia shrugged, removed one earbud, got up and poured water into a glass. No sugar, no ice, no words. Just a loud thud of the glass hitting the table. I forced a thank you, but what burned down my throat wasn't lemonade. After that, I tried not to ask for much. If I could walk, I walked. If I could dress myself, I did. But when the fever hit or I vomited uncontrollably at night, I had no choice but to call for help. At first, Elise came, wiping my forehead, handing me pills, but her eyes drifted farther with each visit. Olivia's frustration showed more clearly. I heard her slam the door after I asked for a damp towel. One night, I woke up to see Elise standing in the doorway with a blanket in her arms, hesitating, then turning away. I didn't blame them. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. No one's ever ready for illness like this. But the feeling of being quietly erased from the hearts of the people you love, there's no prescription for that. One morning, with Olivia at school and Elise making coffee, I decided to say it. Elise, I think we need to bring in a home nurse. She dropped the spoon onto the counter. What's that supposed to mean? You think I'm not doing enough? That's not it. I can see how tired you are. I don't want you to carry this alone. She didn't answer at first, just poured coffee into her mug. The smell of fresh brew did nothing to warm up the cold silence in that kitchen. If you think it's necessary, do it, but don't expect me to sit around while a stranger takes care of you. I called the doctor for recommendations. 3 days later, a woman named Marla showed up, her hair tied back, sharp eyes, voice firm. She'd worked with cancer patients in another state and moved to Arizona to be closer to family. On her first day, she organized my meds, drafted a dosage chart, and made lunch. Braised chicken with greens. No small talk, no fuss, just calm efficiency that made it easier to breathe. Elise wasn't thrilled. Whenever Marla helped me onto the couch or checked my vitals, Elise either started scrubbing something or disappeared upstairs. Olivia ignored the situation altogether. One afternoon, right after Marla left, I heard Elise call from the kitchen. You hired someone because you think I'm useless? I swallowed hard. I hired someone so you could rest. You've been overwhelmed. She didn't answer. Just threw a dishcloth into the sink. The clang of metal on porcelain cut through the air like the last thread of patience snapping. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring through the misted window at the streetlight outside. The sounds in the house, footsteps, water running, clinking plates, doors locking, were still there. What was missing was the feeling that I mattered in any of it. I looked up at the wedding photo hanging above the fireplace. Elise's smile in that picture was soft, her hand wrapped around mine. I wondered if she was still that woman, or had I already lost both my health and my partner before I ever started to fight for either. Not because of the illness, but because it had dragged into the light what had been quietly cracking for a long time. Tomorrow, I'll ask Marla to come more often, not because I want to replace anyone, but because I'm starting to understand. Some battles, if you wait for family to be ready to fight them with you, will break you before they ever show up. That afternoon, after Marla left, Elise sat silently at the dining table, light from the window casting a shadow over the deep frown she'd worn all week. I was lying on the couch, still dazed from a strong dose of antibiotics that made my eyes heavy and my mind feel like it was drifting through snow. Suddenly, Elise asked, "Don't you think she's being a little too familiar?" I turned my head, trying to sit up, but the pain in my back forced me to sink into the cushion again. You mean Marla? Elise, I said, keeping my voice steady. She's just doing her job, nothing more. She's touched you more than I have this whole month, Cameron, Elise muttered, eyes locked on her glass of water. It's hard watching a stranger take care of my husband like that. You said you were overwhelmed. You told me to get help because you couldn't do it anymore. Now that she's helping, you're angry? I spoke slowly, every word pressing down on the space between us. Elise stayed quiet for a long moment, then suddenly snapped, "Then get a male nurse. I don't want another woman hovering around my husband like this." I didn't answer right away. The next day, I called the hospital to ask about the request, but they were clear. Marla was the only available cancer care nurse experienced enough for my condition. The rest were either fully booked or not qualified. When I told Elise, she didn't bother hiding her frustration. "Then fine, let her handle everything. I'm done." Her words weren't a flare of anger. They were a clear signal that the distance between us wasn't temporary anymore. All that week, I noticed Olivia coming home later each day. She had dinner in her room, earbuds always in, sometimes passing through the living room without even glancing at me. Elise stayed upstairs most of the time. Her steps on the stairs sounded slow, heavy, like even the wood beneath her had grown distant. Saturday, while I was dozing off after a morning injection, the front door lock rattled. I pushed myself up and looked out the window. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. My body went numb. Elise stood by the truck, pointing as the driver unloaded boxes. Olivia followed behind, cradling a small cactus pot, her eyes red. I staggered to the door. "What's going on?" Elise didn't look at me. "I'm moving back to my mother's. I need space." "Olivia too. Why didn't you tell me?" "You don't need me anymore. Marla does everything now, right?" I gripped the door frame, not out of anger, but to keep from falling as dizziness surged. "This isn't about Marla, Elise. It's about my illness becoming too much for you." She turned to look at me for the first time in days, but her eyes were hollow. "Yeah, it's too much." I wanted to say something to Olivia, but she walked past without a word. No hug, no goodbye, just the sound of the car door shutting and the dust rising behind them as they disappeared down the street. In that moment, every sound seemed to vanish. Only the slow, lonely thumping in my chest remained. I stepped back inside, each footfall dragging like stone. The house, once so familiar, now felt stripped bare. Olivia's favorite cup was still on the counter. Her backpack leaned against the table leg. Every tiny thing stabbed at my chest, each piece falling apart in silence. That afternoon, Marla arrived right on time. She immediately noticed something was off when she saw 2 pairs of shoes missing from the rack. I didn't need to explain, just looked at her and nodded slightly. Marla didn't press. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "I'll stay a little longer today, if you'd like." I didn't respond, but when she brought over my medication and tucked the blanket around me, my eyes stung. Not from illness, but from the feeling of being left behind, like someone had quietly pulled their hand away just as I was sinking. The next morning, I still hadn't gotten used to the silence. No footsteps down the stairs, no Olivia whining about low-sugar cereal. The house felt like it had been drained of air, leaving behind fragments of quiet that dug into every aching joint I still had left. Around midday, the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw a familiar figure. Thomas, my older brother, tall, wearing sunglasses, carrying a heavy duffel bag. Before I could even greet him, he stepped in, dropped the bag, and turned to me with an expression hotter than the sunlight outside. "You've got 3 minutes to explain why Elise walked out of this house while you're in here gasping like a fish out of water," he snapped, his tone bristling with anger. I nodded weakly, invited him to sit, and told him everything. From when chemo started to when Elise burned out, right up to the moment she and Olivia left without warning. Thomas clenched his fists, staring out at the dry yard. "I don't get it. You've carried everything for years, and the moment you actually need something, she runs? That's insane." I tried to soothe the pulsing ache behind my eyes. "Don't blame them. Maybe they had their reasons." "What reason? Leaving your sick husband? And Olivia? What, she doesn't call you Dad anymore?" I stayed silent. Thomas realized he'd gone too far. He sighed, poured a glass of water, then softened his voice. "Look, I've taken time off work. I'll stay a few days to help you get back on your feet. But after that, I have someone in mind to stay here, not a nurse." I glanced at him, puzzled. He went on, "Remember Kara, my sister-in-law? She just moved out after her scumbag husband cheated. She's in the pharmacy program at ASU, only about a 20-minute drive from here. No steady place to stay. She's stuck in a cramped dorm. If she moves in, you'll have someone here daily, and she'll finally have a quiet place to heal." I hesitated. Kara was quiet, but I remembered how she'd helped me put together that bookshelf last year when Elise and Olivia were out. She didn't complain, didn't hesitate to lift or clean up. Thomas clapped me on the shoulder. "She's solid, Cameron. Trust me, you won't regret it." The next afternoon, Kara showed up. She stepped out of an old gray Mazda, carrying a small suitcase, a backpack, and a box of textbooks. Her brown hair was tied back, her shirt slightly wrinkled, eyes shadowed but alert. "I don't want to be a bother," she said as she stepped inside, her voice raspy but firm. "I just need a quiet place to study, and I'm happy to help with anything around the house." I pointed to the downstairs bedroom, the one Elise had once used as an office. "You can stay here. I don't use it anymore." Cora nodded and quickly organized her things into the closet. Without much talking, she cleaned the kitchen, peeled fruit, took out the trash, and placed my medicine beside me right on time. Every action was quick, subtle, and without show. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept through without being woken by fever or the usual noise echoing in my head. Marla noticed the change too. "You've got someone new helping out?" she asked, while taking my blood pressure. "She's my brother's sister-in-law, not a nurse, but reliable." Marla smiled. "People like her are rare. Don't lose her." 2 days later, Thomas returned with his wife and kids, leaving Kara and me to settle into a temporary rhythm. Mornings, Marla came by. In the afternoons, Kara cleaned while I wrestled with meds and persistent fatigue. She never sighed, never complained. One afternoon, I saw her mopping the floor with earbuds in, replaying lectures. Her eyes strained, but she still scribbled notes in the margins with a pencil. I asked if she was tired. Bakarao just shrugged. "At least I'm doing something useful. Could be worse." Sometimes, the people you never expected are the ones who keep you from falling apart, while those who once vowed to stay forever vanish the moment life gets messy. The follow-up appointment at the end of February was different from all the rest. No harsh surgical lights, no beeping heart monitors, just me, Dr. Becker, and a neatly folded file. He looked at me with a restrained smile. "Cameron, your biopsy results are completely clean. No trace of cancer cells. You're officially in full remission." I didn't react right away. His words didn't feel like a celebration, more like a sharp cut, severing the cord that had bound my mind for the past 8 months. When I walked out of the hospital, I didn't text Elise or call Olivia. I sent a message to Thomas. "All clear. Thanks for everything." On the way home, I stopped by the second-hand tool shop at Roosevelt in Maine. The old wood planer hanging in the front window was marked down. I bought it, not to use right away, but to remind myself this body still had the chance to create something good. That evening, when Kara came home from school, I handed her the doctor's certificate. She smiled, then turned away, pretending to look for something in the kitchen. Her shoulders trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "That's good. You deserve peace." I celebrated with a sugar-free blueberry smoothie and a slice of toast. No party, no cake. Just kitchen lights, wind brushing the yard, and a quiet relief down my spine. 3 days later, I went to the attorney's office downtown in Chandler. Lawyer Palmer, the same man who handled my home purchase, was now sitting across from a divorce file I had already signed. "Cameron, are you sure? This is unilateral. She hasn't signed. If we send it to your mother-in-law's address, they might just ignore it." "I don't need her signature. I just want the legal ties cut." He nodded, signed, and handed me a copy. I placed it in the wooden drawer by my bed and told no one except Thomas and Kara. My first act after recovery was getting active again. I started walking around the block in the early morning before the sun got intense. After a few weeks, I added light exercises, under Marla's guidance. She still stopped by once a week to check my blood pressure and reminded me to eat well. Each visit, she left a small note: "Add more protein," or "Don't skip lunch." Kara kept up with the chores, but we talked less. Not because of distance, but out of mutual respect between two people recovering from broken lives. She was healing from her divorce. I had just removed the chains of a hollow marriage. One afternoon, I logged into the old company system. An email from HR popped up almost instantly. "We're open to remote work if you'd like to return." I thought it over for nearly a week, then replied, "No old title, no raise. Just a desire to contribute again." At the same time, I began looking for a new home. This house was too big for a man relearning how to move forward. Every corner held echoes of arguments, cold silences, and lonely dinners. I needed a space that fit, where no one knew Elise, where no one had seen Olivia walk out without looking back. Eventually, I found a small house in the outskirts of Payson, northern Arizona. White wood siding, pale green roof, surrounded by pine and wildflowers. I placed a deposit the moment I saw the backyard, large enough to build a little woodworking shed. Kara stood beside me as I signed. She didn't ask questions, only smiled. "It suits you." That evening, I laid the house transfer papers on the table. Kara looked stunned. "I'll be moving in 3 weeks," I said. "And this house, if you need it, it's yours. No payment. I've already signed the transfer." She was speechless, her eyes glistening. "Are you sure?" "More sure than I've ever been about anything. I didn't need revenge on Elise. I didn't need closure from Olivia. I just needed to step out of a shell that had long since rotted. Where I was going, no one mentioned the past like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Only clean air, sawdust, and a man living on his own terms." I left the Chandler house on a Monday morning as sunlight barely skimmed the rooftops and leafless trees. No goodbyes, no footsteps overhead. Just Kara on the porch, clutching the title documents I had left on the dining table. She said she'd take care of the place like it was her first real home. I believed her. The borrowed pickup from Thomas rolled off that familiar street, carrying a few bags of clothes, some tools, an old coffee maker, and a sealed wooden box containing all the medical files and prescriptions. Reminders of a life I never wanted back. The new town was called Windale, nestled between two low hills in northern Arizona, about 3,000 people. The kind of place where neighbors smile when they pass you on the street and church bells ring every Saturday evening. My new home sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by patchy grass and backed by a stretch of pine forest. One story, white painted wood, deep red roof. Aged, but solid. Nothing fancy, just enough to start living like someone free from illness and betrayal. The first to greet me was the elderly woman across the road. She wore a wide straw hat and carried a basket of oranges. "Hi there. I'm Sophia. I live right over here. Heard you're the new guy. Congratulations." She placed the basket on my step, her eyes warm like morning sunlight. I thanked her, invited her in. While making tea, she glanced at the temporary shed I'd built in the backyard from a few planks and scrap metal. "Well now, that looks proper. You planning on woodworking?" "I'm not that good. Just need something to keep my hands busy." Sophia nodded, asking nothing more. We talked for about 30 minutes, mostly her telling stories about her late husband, a retired firefighter who passed from lung cancer. When I hinted at my own past, she didn't pry. Just looked at me like she already understood everything I hadn't said. Day by day, I spent time cleaning up, planting more flowers around the porch, reinstalling the garage awning, and sharpening the saw blade. At night, I sat on the small wooden bench outside, sipping ginger tea, listening to crickets, staring at stars the city never showed. No calls, no messages, no emails from Elise or Olivia. It had been a year since they got in that car without looking back. Time hadn't erased everything, but it had lasted long enough to make the silence familiar. Kara still texted occasionally, photos of meals she cooked, a new plant pot in front of the door, an update that she passed her final exam with an A. I didn't ask about Elise. She never mentioned Olivia. Around mid-June, I received an invitation from my old company. They were holding a 30th anniversary event and inviting former employees to return. I didn't go. Instead, I finished a 6-foot-long oak table, flat surface, rounded edges, no paint, just a smooth oil finish, the first piece I'd fully completed since surgery. Sophia saw the table when she brought over some almond cookies. She studied it for a moment, then softly said, "If my husband were still alive, he'd put that in our dining room." I smiled without answering, but those words stayed with me for days. That Sunday afternoon, I stood in the yard, watching the golden streaks of late sunlight stretch across the sky, feeling as if I were in a place where no one owed anyone anything. No explanations, no forgiveness, just waking up each morning knowing I was living in a space untouched by those who hurt me. That was enough, or at least I was learning to let it be enough. That afternoon, while I was drying some planks in the backyard to prep for finishing, Sophia rushed over, still wearing her gardening gloves, a cautious look on her face. "Cameron, there are two strange women standing at your gate," she whispered. "They're looking around like they're inspecting every stone on the path." I froze. Two names flashed through my mind: Elise and Olivia. I didn't even need to look. No one else would care about this house after so much silence. I set down the wood, wiped my hands, and went inside to check the security camera feed on my phone. Just as I suspected, Elise stood at the fence in a dark dress, her hair in a tight bun. Olivia, now older, with dyed dark brown hair and sunglasses, stood behind her, clutching a canvas bag. They didn't knock, they just paced back and forth, whispering and glancing toward the front yard. I wasn't ready to confront them. If they had come with good intentions, they would have knocked long ago. But the energy they brought was anxious, like people planning to reclaim something that no longer belonged to them. Sophia understood. She slipped her phone into her pocket and casually walked toward the gate, as if just passing by. "Hello, can I help you with something?" she asked calmly. Elise turned, forcing a weak smile. Do you happen to know someone named Cameron Nash? My husband used to live here. I mean, my late husband." Sophia tilted her head slightly, staying composed. "I do. He still lives here. Never moved out." Elise froze for a beat, then quickly put on the grieving expression she'd likely rehearsed. "Oh, sorry. But as far as I know, he passed away. After a long illness. We're here to sort out some of his remaining affairs. I'm his legal wife, and this is our daughter." Sophia nodded slowly, as if listening to a strange tale in a grocery store. "Then, do you have a death certificate or a copy of the will? I think the local authorities would need that before allowing any kind of transfer." Elise fumbled. Olivia stayed quiet, scanning for an unlocked door. "No. We don't have documents. My mother said this house belongs to our family. Cameron has no close relatives, so naturally it comes to me," Elise said, her voice losing its confidence. Sophia folded her arms, smiling politely but with an unmistakable edge. "There's a mistake here. Cameron told me clearly that he finalized a divorce and transferred the house to someone else. No one died. Unless you have court documents, nothing here concerns you." The air grew tense. Elise flushed, then snapped, "Who are you to meddle in my family's business? This is personal. I don't need judgment from a stranger." Sophia didn't move. She stood firmly by the gate as if she herself owned the place. "This house no longer belongs to your ex-husband," she said firmly, "and unless you have legal proof, I suggest you leave before this becomes a bigger problem." Elise stomped her foot, her scheming look unmistakable. Olivia tugged at her mother's sleeve, whispering something. After a pause, they turned back. Before getting into the car, Elise glared and spat. "We'll be back. With a lawyer. Don't think you can hide forever." Sophia watched the car disappear behind the trees, then quietly returned to the yard. I had been standing at the door the whole time. Neither of us said a word. She simply placed her hand on mine and nodded as if to say, "Don't worry. I've got this." That night, I locked the gate, reviewed the security footage, and saved the recording to an external drive. Elise might not stop after this failed attempt, but at least now, I wasn't alone. A small house in the hills, a wise neighbor, and a sense of calm. Those were things they could never take back. On Friday afternoon, I was installing the final frame of a bookshelf when a sharp crashing sound erupted from the front yard. Something had shattered. Screaming followed, urgent, chaotic. I rushed to the porch to find Sophia struggling with a woman at the gate. Nearby, Mr. Bill, the neighbor 3 houses down, was restraining a girl with dark hair and a half-hanging backpack. On the ground lay a smashed flower pot, a cracked front window, debris scattered across the path. Elise stood there, hair messy, gripping a short metal rod. Her face turned red, eyes wide with rage when she saw me step outside. "So you really are alive," she panted, half laughing, half yelling. "You've been hiding here while we've been struggling every damn day." I looked her straight in the eye. "No one's hiding. I live here, out in the open. You barged in and destroyed someone else's home in broad daylight, like it was yours." Olivia stood behind her, hands shaking, but still unwilling to back down. "I don't want to come back," the girl mumbled, "but Mom made me go with her." Elise cut her off, her voice shrill. "You abandoned us." "When I lost everything, when my mother died, when my father had nothing left to pass down, and you lived here like nothing ever happened." I stepped forward, lowering my voice. "I didn't disappear. I filed for divorce, left the house behind, kept quiet so everyone could live the way they wanted. You chose to leave. No one forced you." Elise tightened her grip on the metal rod, eyes narrowing. You think you can just walk away from all this? Olivia needs tuition money. I need a roof over my head. You owe us. I didn't blink. I owe no one. Olivia turned her back on me when I was struggling to breathe. She's not my daughter anymore. I'm giving up my right as a father. Right here. The air grew heavy, like something was about to snap. You're a heartless man, Elise hissed, then suddenly raised the rod and swung it at my shoulder. I didn't have time to step back. The blow landed hard, knocking me off balance. Just as she was about to strike again, a shout rang out near the fence. The cops are on their way, Sophia yelled, pointing at the SUV that had just turned the corner. 2 officers rushed over, shouting, "Drop the weapon! Hands on your head!" Elise froze for a few seconds before being pinned to the ground. Olivia was held separately. She didn't resist, but her face was stricken with panic. I sat on the porch steps, clutching my aching left shoulder. One of the officers came to ask what happened, and I pointed to the camera above the porch. Everything's recorded. She attacked me, destroyed property, and trespassed. Elise screamed as she was placed in the squad car, but this time, no one looked away in pity. Neighbors stood still, many shaking their heads. Olivia was taken in a separate vehicle, her hands cuffed, although she didn't seem to fully grasp what was going on. After they were gone, I returned to the yard and began picking up pieces of the shattered planter, one by one. Sophia brought over a cold compress wrapped in cloth and gently placed it on my shoulder. "They won't dare come back after this," she said softly. I nodded. "I'm filing a restraining order." A few days later, I went to the police station and submitted the paperwork. They helped finalize the documents, attaching video evidence and witness statements. Elise was charged with assault and destruction of property, while Olivia, being underage, was sentenced to community service with the condition that she stay at least 100 feet away from me. They're old friends. I heard they'd been kicked out of the budget motel they were staying in for not paying on time. The house Elise's mother once lived in had already been sold by its rightful owner. The person they mistakenly thought was family. With nowhere left to go and no one to take them in, they came back to me as their last resort. But every door is now closed, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. A person can only be hurt so many times before they learn to shut themselves off completely. For me, that gate closed the moment Elise turned away and let me take an Uber alone to my first chemo session. As for Olivia, she made her choice the day I asked, "Are you sure you want to go?" "Aha." Her reply still echoes in my memory like a cold blade to the chest. "I can't stand to look at you like this." Some wounds don't need medicine. They just need the person who caused them to know they'll never get another chance. After everything, Cameron came to understand that blood ties and wedding vows mean nothing without loyalty and empathy. He was abandoned at his weakest, but that taught him how to set boundaries and protect himself from those who once saw him as a burden. Now he lives quietly in a small town, no longer hoping for remorse from the past. To Cameron, peace doesn't come from others. It comes from the firm choice to step away from pain. What do you think about Cameron's decision? Was he too harsh, or was this the only way to truly protect himself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful real-life stories coming soon.